Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
California. What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Thursday, November 17th. In the midst of Twitter crashing and crumbling around us, the ruins of said... by the way, I think I reached 9,999 Twitter followers today, so I would figure that it completely goes downhill now. Finally reaching the magic 10,000 here. So, as Twitter crashes and crumbles, as a legend retires, as so many things are happening with the LA Galaxy, we want to get to and we want to talk to you about it. We have a great show for you tonight. The LA Galaxy announcing their return to the desert. We're going to talk about some of the season pass stuff that's coming up. Some little other news nuggets in there as well, but trust me, a very, very packed show. To help me do all of it, we're glad to have him back. Hasn't been back since September, I think. Way too long. We're glad to have him. It's Mr. Christian Miles. Christian, my friend, how are you doing?
I've been missing you guys. I've been missing you. I feel dejected. I'm lonely in the corner over here.
It does sort of feel like there's nothing to do. Like, is it? It feels a little bit like the time, like right before school starts, where you know that you have to go to school, and so like you kind of don't want to do anything. Maybe like a Sunday evening, right? You get the Sundays where you're like, hey, tomorrow I have to do stuff, so now Sunday evening kind of sucks. That's kind of where it feels right now. We know we have stuff to do. I kind of don't want to do it, but you have to get through it. You have to get through the holidays, and then things will finally start to open and blossom up for the beginning of the season. Does it feel that way, or is that just me?
I see what you're saying, but I'm kind of a nervous wreck right now. I mean, we got the World Cup coming up on a Monday. We've got all this, free agency going on in MLS. There's so much uncertainty. It kind of feeds into my nervousness right now that I don't know. I need some stability. I need some grounding. So
right.
Hopefully we can work through that right now. So I don't know. It's a long time till February, right?
It's almost a long time. It's actually just 100 days until the LA Galaxy kick off against LAFC. If that doesn't like sort of say, oh, it's really far away, but it's also really close. I mean, I know there's 30 days in a month, so technically still more than 3 months away. But at the same time, it says 100 days on there, and I know 100 days isn't that far away. Maybe it's less than a third of a year. So again, I mean, I'm trying to do the math. 100 days feels close to me. Like there should be solid things in place already because it's only 100 days away.
Yeah, it's a little less than a third of the years, though. So we got some time. We got a lot of stuff to do in between then. Galaxy had a lot to sort out, too, I mean, in between now and then. So, yeah, it's kind of funny. The season's over and you think, oh, it's time to chill out. And whatever. There's so many behind-the-scenes things going on.
It's when I start to feel guilty for not doing shows like every single, like 2 a week all the time. I start to feel guilty about it. But at the same time, it's like, we're not quite there yet. Calm down. Everybody breathe. By the way, a $2 super chat from Chris who says, RIP Twitter. Yeah, I know. We're sort of...
That didn't take long.
Oh, man.
Yeah, nice hashtag.
And I'm sure it won't be Elon's fault that it all went. It'll be other people whose fault it was. It wasn't him coming in like a bull in a china shop and wrecking everything. It's one of those. It's like having kids. I don't know if you ever go to a store, you're always afraid. I'm always afraid my kid is going to break something because I'm going to pay for it. But at the same time, like if you're talking about it in terms of Twitter, it's like going into the store, letting your kid break stuff, and then blaming the store. It's like
exactly the drunken bull in a china shop.
It is. Let's get to LA Galaxy and start to talk about some LA Galaxy news. An interesting day. A lot of nerves today. People thought there was a big signing afoot. I saw everybody saying, oh, Aaron Long, blah, blah, blah. I would like you to know that from Qatar, Panda texted me and was like, hey, Aaron Long, he goes, that whole signing thing, don't bite into it. He's like, don't bite. And I'm like, are you sure? He's like, don't bite. And I'm like, I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I had this tweet or a text on my phone, and I wrote back to him real quick. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, I'm sure. I'm like, he's like, don't bite on it. I'm like, okay. So I knew that. I also had been tipped off about 24 hours earlier that perhaps one Mr. AJ DeLaGarza was coming back to the LA Galaxy for the purposes of signing a one-day contract and retiring. So I knew that was in play, and I knew why people were sort of thinking Aaron Long, but that timeline, I'm telling you, nothing's really those free agent signings. I don't expect a lot of them unless they're staying with the teams they're at and that's where they want to be. I don't expect a lot of those things to happen for any World Cup players. Right? Like World Cup players are often World Cup things. They're nothing. Let them go do World Cup things. And then when they come back, they will sort out their free agency and everything else. So for me, I was like, no, that doesn't even make sense, even if you thought it was Aaron Long. But we did get the announcement, and it was Mr. AJ DeLaGarza. The LA Galaxy going a long way to right a wrong in this particular. This is the least they could do, Christian, in my particular opinion on this. This goes back, obviously, to the infamous 2017 season. This goes back to Pete Vianis and the infamous trade for AJ DeLaGarza. I think moving him to Houston, if I remember correctly, at the time. So he goes to Houston, and possibly, and the rumors were possibly after being told he wasn't going to be traded, right? That he was safe, that he was staying. And I think they had just bought a house not too long ago, and they were really sort of settling down, and everybody knows AJ DeLaGarza, a fan favorite. So the least the LA Galaxy could do, and I have to imagine it wasn't much of a thought-provoking, like it wasn't like, oh, we have to think about this, but the least they could do is have AJ DeLaGarza retire as a Galaxy player. So he signs a one-day contract, he retires as an LA Galaxy player, and that ends a very long career. And a guy who I started my soccer coverage with. 2009 was my first season doing podcasting, Christian. One of the few first players I interviewed was AJ DeLaGarza. The first one was Brian Jordan. Everybody remembers that. Next was AJ DeLaGarza, right? So AJ has been a huge part of not only my coverage, not only this show, because AJ would call in at least maybe once a month during some of those years, and he was always a guy that I could reach out to and be like, hey, would you mind coming on the show? Absolutely, I'll do it. There's I would say it's an infamous episode because we didn't know, but AJ was supposed to come on the show and he wasn't answering his texts and he wasn't doing it. I was with co-host Corey Ritzow, and I was told, hey, he'll get to you, he's busy right now, the whole deal, and we weren't given a lot of information. And so AJ calls into the show. Finally, he's a little bit about 10, 15 minutes late in the whole deal. And he goes, and he was going through a tough time. This is whenever Luca hadn't quite been born yet. So the whole deal, but we didn't know exactly what was going on. But AJ said he wanted to come on the show. It wasn't a problem. Well, he called us from the hospital. They were getting a checkup at the hospital, and he called us and went out of the room in order to talk to us. And I remember Corey talked to him for a little bit, and then I'm like, you don't need to be talking to us. This is not that important. And we ended up canceling. But that's how dedicated I think AJ was to making sure that his fans knew what was going on and staying connected. And then, quite honestly, I hope that that he trusted us to sort of tell his story on the show so much. So to see AJ retire, Christian, we were just talking about how old we were before we started this. That's a little reminder of how old we are. That AJ DeLaGarza started his career. Right? Yeah, right. Started his career in 2009, and here I've outlasted some players, but this one hits a little closer to home. But I couldn't be happier that AJ DeLaGarza, and I'm such a big fan of his personally. This is just such I think it's the perfect way, and I was hoping that it would end this way in some way possible, that he would be attached to the Galaxy.
It's tough because, we sit here and we talk about the soccer and we talk about everything, but the human side of this is, we develop relationships with these people. I have a relationship with you. You have a relationship with these people. You have a relationship with AJ, and you develop a fondness for people that you interact with on a daily basis. And there's that human factor. So, you can't help but feel, and you want the best for these people that you really kind of take a liking to. And, I think AJ is one of those guys. I don't have a relationship with AJ. I know people that know him, that people that I hold in high esteem. I think of him in the highest regard, and I think of him back in the glory days of the Galaxy, and everything that he did was great. My question to you, he hasn't been on. What did you say to him to not make him want to come back?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. I reached out to him and I was like, hey, you know, blah, blah, blah. I think they were off at the chasing around a mouse around Anaheim, if I know correctly, right? Which, as a family man and as a dad of 3 girls, he has to visit the mouse. You have to pay your respects to the mouse whenever you're in this area. 3 girls. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm sure there's a part of him that was like after Luca passed away that he was like, maybe I'll get a boy. And you know, that's how you end up with 3, by the way. That's usually how you end up with 3. You're always trying to get the other one, right? And then there's 3, then you cut it off. That's it. No more. I know somebody who went to 5, by the way, because they kept trying to, and I think they ended up with like 5 boys, trying for the girl. But AJ and Megan and their entire family are part of the Galaxy family, and I think AJ said it, and so often I think it could be sort of seen as not genuine, but he said, you know, part of you, the fan base here, is part of my family. And like most people say that, and you're like, yeah, whatever, lip service. With AJ, it means something. Yeah. I had to miss the Luca Knows Heart game, right? This was I believe you know, sort of the big emotional outpouring and the turnaround. I forget what year it was. I know somebody will correct me in the chat room, but the Galaxy went out, and I was on an airplane, and I was traveling back to, I believe, Southern California, and this game was on that evening, or whether I was traveling to Colorado, however it was going in that thing. So I was listening to it and trying to watch it on the plane. Like, I bought the $14 internet to try to do it, and it's like coming in spurts and things. But I remember the goal after goal started being scored by the LA Galaxy, and I remember just the emotional outpouring, not only from the fans, I felt it myself, and from AJ and everybody else. That was such a moment. And that's one of those together moments, Christian, right? Where it's like, it doesn't matter who you are, but you feel like you're part of something that's bigger than what you're actually at.
It's like a part of sport, but it's bigger than sport.
Yeah, so much.
And it's also, it's part of like, just, I mean, I'm not going to get mushy and hippie with you. It's just part of being a human, and we're interacting in these situations where that's what makes sport. And it's the pure unbridled honesty of it in that moment. And I know exactly what you're feeling. You get overcome for emotion because you love these people, and,
right?
You know, they're interacting, they're succeeding, and you want them to succeed. But it's just, you know, it's hard to explain. It's hard to put it into words. But I have the same sentiment, and I know exactly where you're coming from. And you want nothing but great things to happen to people like AJ.
Yeah, and that's sort of, you want the best. And I've always said this about all the Galaxy players. I want Galaxy players to succeed.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? You know, and I don't think I've been shy about that. I mean, I have favorites. I was telling you before, my favorite player I think I ever covered for the LA Galaxy is Ashley Cole. You were a little surprised by that, but he
surprised me.
He was very nice to me, and he was so intelligent with soccer and his soccer takes, and it was always such a pleasure to talk to him. Nigel de Jong was up there as one of my favorite people to talk to. Landon Donovan, Todd Donovan, AJ DeLaGarza, you know, Sean Franklin. It's a lot of it's sort of Mike McGee. You're talking about the core of the LA Galaxy that was there for a while, are some of these people that really you wanted to succeed, and you really were sort of, even though as being in the press box you don't cheer, you're not picking a side, but I would like to see them succeed, and if that means winning a championship is the ultimate, then that's the, you know, sort of the succeed that I want to see, or the success that I want to see. I was trying to be fun with that, but yeah.
I mean, someone's coming in to say goodnight. So
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, this is Princess Layton.
Hi, Layton.
Okay. Good night, sweet. Go get.
Good night, Layton.
See Mama, and we'll go have. Yeah.
But yeah, so you know, just all of those little things that we've sort of seen in throughout the years and in different ways and in doing different things, we have it sort of brings it all home. My favorite AJ DeLaGarza moment, by the way, is an MLS Cup moment. And that's whenever he decided to take out Charlie Davies. Whenever Charlie Davies is rushing towards the end line and a possibility on a breakaway, and AJ DeLaGarza chased down Davies and was able to stuff him on the shot inside the penalty box. It's one of the greatest track back runs and stops of all time in Major League Soccer. Absolutely one of my favorite things. So we're glad that AJ's there. Here's the cool part. If you want to have want to send AJ off, they are doing a Friday night retirement party for AJ DeLaGarza. And to me, I think that's cool. And I'm not sure it was something that they had planned on. I'm not sure it was something that, like, it seems like they set this up and did a little bit of stuff for it, but it's fun. The address is 1115 East Wardlow Road in Long Beach, California, 90807 on Friday, November 18th from 7 to 9 p.m. You can go there. You can hang out with AJ. They're having an AJ DeLaGarza retirement party. As of right now, I think I'm going to be there. So I'm gonna go drop by and say hi and say I'm sure I'll see a bunch of Galaxy fans there and hopefully say hello and thank you to AJ. So it's a lot of fun sort of being in this moment for AJ and enjoying it. And during the whole Twitter, people were freaking out about Aaron Long. I said, everybody just take a deep breath and relax and enjoy this moment because you don't often get there's nothing to hate about this. There is zero to hate. You can't be angry about it. You can't be upset. This is the pure joy moment that you get as a fan, is to be able to see one of your legends. And, AJ DeLaGarza maybe won't be considered an MLS legend, Christian. But he is considered an LA Galaxy legend forever and ever.
Oh, 100%. I mean, what he did unheralded coming out of college, I mean, the consummate team player and a versatile team player. Did whatever he's asked, played out of position. When was the last time you heard something negative out of the locker room about AJ DeLaGarza?
Never.
Can't recall, ever.
Nope.
I mean, when he was put in positions where, he knew he was doing his strongest work and he wasn't in his best position, but he got on with it and did it. And those are the guys he needs. He's a glue guy and he's of good character. I mean, and you want nothing but the best for these guys. You go back to, like, here we are, everybody freaking out on Twitter and everything. It's the silly season. Everything's going to hyperbole runs amok. It's just absolutely insanity. So, you take that with a little bit of grain of salt and you just you take a step back and go, look at the character of these people, look what they've contributed to the organization and let them have their day. And if anybody deserves their day, it's this guy, AJ DeLaGarza.
Yeah, it is. By the way, tallied 3 goals, 7 assists, and 250 appearances with 238 starts and 8 seasons. Played across all competitions with the LA Galaxy, 2009 to 2016, where he won 3 MLS Cups in 11, 12, and 14.
But he was so small, and I mean, he sat in the center of that defense, and he played he played bigger than he was.
Yep.
And for me, I mean, I don't know if I'm recalling it correctly, but he played bigger than he was. A guy could step into center of defense, and you're looking at him, you're like, oh, he looks like a slow right back stuck in center back position, and then he wins every ball. He steps forward, his timing, he's a great player, and he's kind of had that kind of soccer IQ that kind of compensated perhaps for a lack of imposing physical stature, but had a great soccer brain, good athlete. I don't know, it's just. I feel like we need more of those kind of guys in the league.
Galaxy could use them right now. Galaxy could use somebody like AJ DeLaGarza right now, just as a complimentary piece. And he was the best complimentary player to a guy like Omar Gonzalez. And I've always argued Omar owes about half his salary to AJ DeLaGarza whenever it comes, because AJ made a lot of Omar's mistakes go away. And just with AJ's smarts and his speed and his quickness was certainly there. So big shout out to AJ DeLaGarza, always a part of this show. And as I said on Twitter, which will probably explode here in a little while and no longer be there, but I'll say it here as well. AJ, there's an open chair for you anytime you want to come on, anytime you need to call, anytime you want to talk about the LA Galaxy or anything at all. You're, of course, welcomed here on Corner of the Galaxy. We consider you a friend of the show. So always and forever a part of this show and the LA Galaxy. We're glad that he could retire as a member of the LA Galaxy. That's kind of cool. Now, the other part. So AJ got a thank you post, right? Thank you, AJ DeLaGarza, and it comes up, and the Galaxy tweet about it and the whole deal. There was another player who got a thank you post, and then that tweet disappeared. And, of course, on November 14th, the LA Galaxy had contract decisions. We're going to talk about those contract decisions. One of the contract decisions was an out-of-contract player. That was Sasha Kljestan. The LA Galaxy said, thank you, Sasha. And I was sort of sitting there scratching my head a little bit going, just because he's out of contract doesn't necessarily mean that he can't come back. That's not how it is. But whenever they sent out the thank you post, I considered that maybe I was wrong about it. But then that post got deleted. And there's still a chance that Sasha Kljestan could come back. I don't know that he's decided on retirement. It's sort of there's a bunch of things that are sort of coming back. Sasha was pretty adamant earlier this season that he wanted to come back and play another season. Now, in my mind, that leaves him one of two options. Either he plays with the LA Galaxy or plays with LAFC, because I don't think he wants to move outside of LA now. I think he's trying to set up roots for his family and put him there. So if there's an option for him to play at either of those clubs, I think that he would do it. And Sasha, I think, has earned the right to sort of be able to do whatever he wants to do for his last year. If again, the guy played for senior league minimum for the LA Galaxy last year. He got some money, I think, from the coaching side of things as well, because he was doing some academy coaching and being involved with that, which is a whole other thing. But that's one of the things. So if you thought that Sasha Kljestan retired, that announcement has not been made, and I don't know that that decision has been made by Sasha, but he will, of course, be the one who has sort of the last word on that. And if the LA Galaxy could possibly fit him back into the lineup for one more year, or maybe they don't, then there's a lot of sort of little decisions to be made. But as of right now, he is not a Galaxy player. He's just out of contract right now. So we'll see what that ends up being, and hopefully that's it. I mean, Sasha Kljestan, not a huge impact on the field this year. And I would say maybe certainly wanting for some steps. There were some steps there where you're sort of like, hey, it would be nicer if you had Sasha from about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago in those particular plays and in those particular moments. But he's an important piece of the locker room, or has been since he joined the LA Galaxy. So what do you think, Christian? Do you think Sasha comes back for another year?
I'd like to see Sasha come back as a coach.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I think his future lies on the touchline. I think you've talked about it, and he wants to be on the touchline. He's got the brain of a coach, in my opinion. I've known Sasha, going back to his rookie year coming out of Seton Hall, and when he was, so highly touted, and it's so odd to see him at this point of his career, and it's great to watch him mature.
Right.
We were just talking about AJ and watching players mature, and although I don't have a real, kind of personal relationship with Sasha, I felt like I've known him, watching him through his career and watching him develop, and had his John overseas and came over here. And talk about a brain for the game. Yeah, I think he's one of those guys that has it. You can see it. I mean, he's basically like, the assistant coach that is not an assistant coach sitting next to Vanny. And his future, in my estimation, knowing players and of his, kind of cerebral acumen about the game, there's no doubt about it. He's going to be a great coach. So
yeah,
I think he will be back. It's up to him, and a loyal servant like him deserves to make his choice. And if he wants to come back and play another season like that, then in whatever role it wants to be, then yes, then that will have to be looked at and decided and agreed on by the mutual parties. Even if that doesn't happen, I still think there's a role for Sasha Kljestan to play. We're going to hear from Sasha Kljestan for many years to come.
Yeah.
His brain is too good to waste in this game. And, I love to see players go from players like him that are so smart and read the game to go into coaching roles. We've seen it with Berhalter. We've seen it with Jim Curtin. I think Sasha Kljestan is of that ilk, and his greater days in terms of coaching are well ahead of him.
Yeah, it sort of feels that way. I think I'm with you as well. So we'll see. He's off at the World Cup, I believe, and whether he's actually there or doing some of his remote stuff or not, he's working for Fox and I think some of their digital team and doing some stuff there. So you will see Sasha Kljestan during the World Cup, which, as Christian said, basically starts this weekend, which will be interesting because it's already been, much like Twitter, Qatar has been very fire festy so far, and we'll see if that continues or not.
Good times.
Let's get to a little bit more of league news. Now, I know a lot of people were worried, Christian. The LA Galaxy obviously had players available for selection in the expansion draft that was putting St. Louis into the league. That happened on Friday, November 11th. The reason that you probably missed it was that they only picked 5 players, and none of those 5 players were on the LA Galaxy. And I think we sort of had talked about that it was unlikely that St. Louis would pick an LA Galaxy player. I know everybody was like, oh, they could pick Douglas Costa, couldn't they? And that's such a great deal. And like, no, that ain't happening. We talked about Nick DePuy possibly being one of the guys who could be selected because as a center back, he is a capable domestic center back. Maybe he's not a starter for you, but he's a solid player on a fairly innocuous price tag overall. So we thought maybe that was going to happen. That did not happen. Again, 5 players were picked: Orlando City, Inter Miami, New England, FC Cincinnati, and New York Red Bulls. It was Gioacchini from Orlando City. Did I say that right? Or what? You had to do it. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, Vasilev from Inter Miami. You had Bell from New England. You had Nelson from FC Cincinnati, and you had Jake LaCava from New York Red Bulls, and then that Jake LaCava then got traded to Miami for $150,000 in 2023 general allocation money, which is not a lot whenever you think about it, but interesting. St. Louis also picked up center back Tim Parker in a trade with the Houston Dynamo for $500,000 in general allocation money over the next 2 seasons. Houston will also retain a portion of Parker's salary hit for the next 2 seasons as well. That's interesting. So the $500K is split 250. So they own $250,000 in jam this year, $250 in general allocation money for next year. And then also Houston is retaining a portion of the salary. I mean, there's a whole lot to sort of pay attention to in that. And then we talked about Jake LaCava being traded to Miami for $150,000 in 2023 general allocation money. So that's St. Louis. St. Louis now in the league. I mean, once you start picking expansion players and participating in the roster building exercises of the offseason, the postseason, and the preseason, you are officially part of the league. So MLS now with 29 teams, which is a lot of teams. They also did their jersey unveil as well, and we'll look at this graphic a little bit later. But I guess a reddish pink of St. Louis, which isn't a surprise when you think of like sort of the St. Louis. Yeah, I was going to say sort of St. Louis Cardinals adjacent, but not quite. It's like you couldn't have that real red. It's just, it's so close. And so anyway, the big deal here, and obviously one of the reasons that they announced the jerseys was to get the hype for it, but also the Apple TV patch that we're going to talk about here in a little bit as well. So every team will have the Apple TV patch. So be prepared to see that on an LA Galaxy uniform. I don't know if we'll have another patch gate or not. But we'll see if that ends up coming down. And then we'll get to talk about it ad nauseum on this podcast, I'm sure. I'm the patch guy now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The shade of the Apple TV logos, did it change for each individual?
It does. It changes for each individual team. So the Galaxy on their navy blues, remember they have a new away kit, so I imagine it's going to be a navy blue base. Might have a white logo, but on their white, it might be navy blue, right? Ooh, fancy. So fancy. So
much to talk about.
There's you can dive into the details in MLS and you'll get lost. You'll never find your way back out. By the way, let's get to some of these.
Segue coming.
There was a segue, and I wanted to get to Twitter, but I also forgot that I forgot some of this other stuff that we have. Jonathan gave us a $5 super chat and says, "Happy AJ Day. The curse is broken, much like the Bambino and the GOAT. Now we have AJ DeLaGarza returning home, hopefully to break the curse for this LA Galaxy team." I agree with that. We'll see if the soccer gods are appeased or not. The LA Galaxy I think, an upward momentum shot anyway. So maybe bringing AJ back, Christian, was just enough to break the curse now, and they should be good. What they gave us a $5 super chat, and we were talking about thank you tweets, and the classic is it says thank you, once a G, always a G, right? So thank you, Christian Miles, once a G, always a G. Thank you, Josh Guesman, once a G, always a G. When I die, I better not get one of those. If that happens and you're all witnesses, do not let them give me a thank you tweet. That is unacceptable. I will not allow.
Get you on your podcast epitaph.
Yeah, that's. I'm gonna have to record like a "If I Die" podcast, and that gets like released and it's like and gives away all my worldly possessions. What they gave us a $5 super chat says, "Everyone getting ready for the sweet thank you Kevin post from the Galaxy." Obviously talking about Kevin Cabral. Right? They're hoping that eventually it's like, hey, once a G, always a G. Although with that one, they'll be like, thank you, Kevin. And then it'll just be silence. So yeah, that one, I don't know. Maybe that happens this year. Maybe you're going to get an announcement more like LA Galaxy have loaned winger Kevin Cabral to League Two side, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And the LA Galaxy will be paying most of his salary. I don't know how that works, but I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that this year. Let's get to Twitter. And I know we were joking about Twitter before, but one of the big things that sort of was talked about and was looked at was Twitter after they announced this $8 charge. I've been sort of conflicted about whether or not whether I should pay $8 a month to get a check mark or not. I kind of feel like I haven't had one and I don't need one, and I have almost 10,000 followers, so I probably don't need one. Yeah. But I don't know. It's just so weird right now. But anyway, one of the reports that came out was that Twitter was targeting football clubs, like one club in each league, to sort of be like, hey, there's this new Twitter thing. Just pay $8. And so it's sort of like this advertisement. And apparently the money was so much that it was, quote unquote, according to this tweet, mouth-watering, right? So it was like, I looked at it and said, there is no team in Major League Soccer that would be able to turn down Twitter money. And if no team is going to be able to turn down mouth-watering Twitter money, right, then if you're an LA Galaxy fan, you hope it's your team, because that should be a lot of money in order to do that stuff. Now, I did reach out to the LA Galaxy, and I did ask about this. And you have to understand, the LA Galaxy are owned by a giant corporation called the AEG. And AEG has its own marketing and advertising and all sorts of things. And so a lot of times, some of these sponsorships come down the rabbit hole, and the team doesn't even know they're coming, because they're put together and they're curated by the AEG, overall advertising, giant. I'm sure their advertising side on the AEG is like 300 people. It's like got to be massive, because they have places all over. So it's very likely that the LA Galaxy were contacted, but through AEG and the global partnerships that they have that way. And so we may not know ever, or we may not know until it's ready to sign, whether or not the LA Galaxy were ever even talked about. But if there's a lot of money out there, Christian, again, like I say, if it's going to go to one club, and Twitter is maybe, on its death knell, trying to pass out cash to make some cash. You gotta spend money to make money. I've heard that a lot. Maybe you're okay with the LA Galaxy being shills for this $8 service that gets you a blue check mark and allows you to cost Lockheed Martin $1 billion in an afternoon.
Yeah, I'm ambivalent about this one. I don't know enough about it, to be honest with you. I mean, I explained it a little bit, but I don't know. You're talking about Twitter Blue. I think that's what he's talking about as
yes.
well. Elon, it's I don't know, Josh. It's
too much, isn't it? It feels like it's too much.
It's a lot to me, and it's also uncharted waters that, to be honest with you, I'm not the most well versed in.
Right.
But also too, it
feels dirty. You mean like Herbalife? Oh, I said that, not you. Just in case anybody was paying attention. That was Josh who just threw Herbalife under the multi-level marketing umbrella there, and how it takes advantage of people. But I digress. We're talking about Twitter here. It seems weird, doesn't it?
It is weird. It's like a whole other like Twitterverse. Use the pun, but yeah, it's just strange. It's not something that you want to be proactive in terms of promoting right now at this point, because there's so much drama going on over there. And then the whole Twitter Blue thing, I'm not sure, why do I need this? No,
you shouldn't.
That's like you were just saying, 10,000 followers. I mean, what do you have as an advantage to being a Twitter Blue subscriber?
I tried my darndest to go ahead and get officially it was verified, right? I tried to get verified multiple times. They never wanted to, and I thought I had earned it at some point, where it was we're a pretty good source of news and information for the Galaxy. We should probably have a verification at this point.
Absolutely. But you had like 100,000 followers for that or something like that.
No, you don't have to have that. It was more just as news reporters, you could be a news person or a sports person, and they could do that. But it never happened. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. So anyway, if the LA Galaxy gets some money from that, you heard it here, that we talked about it, and Twitter was possibly offering out and handing out boatloads of cash, and so then maybe you'll have a little more insight than some of your friends who are like, this is stupid, why are the Galaxy doing it? Well,
even though they're on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yeah, well, hey, okay. Each their own. Let's get to the LA Galaxy contract decisions, though. This happened on Monday. This was expected to come. We knew we were going to get the option picked up and the option declines and the out of contracts. So let's go over who the LA Galaxy picked up to start. So the option exercise, Chicharito was one of the option exercise. We knew about that. He had a performance-based option that was picked up. He did the performance. He picked it up. We don't know about everybody else's. All we know is that their options were picked up. Sega Koulibaly, option picked up. Martin Cáceres had his option picked up. We have Johnny Perez, his option picked up. Adam Saldana, his option. Daniel Aguirre, his option. And Preston Judd, his option picked up. It's really interesting. Daniel Aguirre has 3 club options. I think this was his second one, because I think he had a 2021 contract that ended. And so now we're into 2 of 3 club options for him, and that eventually ends in 2024. Preston Judd had 2 club options. The first one was picked up this particular time, so Preston Judd gets his option picked up as well. None of those surprising. I think they had already tipped off that they were going to look at Cáceres as part of one of the guys who they were going to exercise an option. Sega as well. One of the guys you don't see on here who was on an option year though was Mr. Jonathan Bond. And he is not on this. As a matter of fact, he is shown on the roster. And I had hinted that he was coming back. And now I can tell you, Jonathan Bond signed a new contract with the LA Galaxy. I believe it was in July. It could have been in the middle of the year at some point. Had signed a new contract. We don't know the details of the contract. We don't know how many years he has. Eventually, it will be publicly announced. Jonathan Bond said it on his Facebook and Instagram accounts that it had been picked up. We actually reported it whenever the roster was put out. That Jonathan Bond had signed a new contract, and that's why he wasn't on an option, because I hate it whenever they don't do that, and then we're just supposed to like, oh, well, Jonathan Bond was on an option, but he's showing that he has a contract, so how did that happen? Well, he got a new contract. So Jonathan Bond picked up new contract. We don't have the details on it. We'll know more probably here in the next, before preseason starts. I'm sure they will officially announce his contract renewal and everything, but really should have happened in July. But hey, what do I know? That was right in the middle of when the Galaxy were really sucking. So maybe they didn't want to announce it then because they were worried about that. But is what it is. But Jonathan Bond is not on that list, but you will see him on the official roster. One of the guys who's out of contract we talked about already is Sacha Kljestan. So that's one of the guys you can't put on the roster and is no longer on the roster as of right now. And then you have the options declined. Options declined was Jorge Villafaña, Victor Vasquez, Jonathan Klinsmann, Richard Sanchez, and Eric Zavaleta. Now, everybody on that list, Vasquez, Klinsmann, Sanchez, and Zavaleta, Christian, are all still in talks with the LA Galaxy.
Yeah, they can renegotiate their deals.
They can. And most of the time, if there's four, and knowing sort of, I think, where the Galaxy are on this, I would expect that three of those probably come back. I don't know which three, but usually it's like one or two don't make it back from the remain in talks status, and that goes away. And so it could be, and Victor Vasquez is a big question mark about whether or not he comes back. Certainly he's not coming back at the price tag that he has been under, and so if he comes back, he would have to be a lot cheaper. Again, we talked about Sacha, we talked about Victor, probably in the same sort of strand there, Christian, as a coach who's on the field, and whether or not he can still provide something to this LA Galaxy team for next year. Interesting.
In my honest opinion, I think it's time for Victor to go.
Yeah. I don't disagree.
Very much. Great leg, great mind for the game, but the body doesn't match the mind right now. And I think we really saw that kind of a lesser extent of Sacha, and a player that was, if it was a 2019 Victor, by all means, re-sign him. But I think Victor has kind of reached that stage of his career where he can't quite deliver what he is capable of. So I would personally like to see him go, right? Because, we can talk about money and everything, the machinations, but the point is he's taking up a spot. And if you have a spot where another player can contribute, then that's a detriment to your team. And you need to think about the whole team in this, kind of bigger outlook of things. So he came in and he did good work, and I think that you could see that there was a big drop off on him. And that, no disrespect to Victor, fantastic player,
right,
like Sacha, but there's a time where you've got to abandon 36, 37-year-old people and let young blood come through. And I think that's kind of a problem that this league's had, where we've had problems trusting young players and bringing them through. Why do we have this USL setup? Why do we have a Los Dos setup? Why do we not give chances for players like Liam Doyle and a Cameron Dunbar or a Jalen Neal? Right. It's time to do that.
Yep.
If we're going to be a real league, it's time to take that leap. And part of that is kind of letting go of these older players like that and thank them for their service, because what they did was fantastic. But it's time. This is football. You've got to think about the greater good.
Yeah. I think with Sacha and with Victor, to me, it comes down to price, which is I have zero issues with what Sacha did last year because he made, $87,000. I'm not going to be upset about anything that sort of comes about that whenever you know that those are the numbers that you're working with, right? Yeah, he made $84,000. I just want to double check and just sort of see. It's sort of the same with Victor Vasquez. I don't think you can sit there and say, okay, Victor Vasquez at $440,000 is a value anymore. He takes up an international slot as well, so that's something. The LA Galaxy currently have 9 of 8 slots, so they have one more player than they have available slots because you start every season with 8. So if they're going to move somebody, then possibly you move Victor Vasquez. You're then roster compliant, at least going in, knowing that you're probably going to bring in other people, knowing that you're probably going to have to go out and buy some more international slots and some things that are sort of out there. But yeah, For me, it's always about price. That being said, there's also a roster spot that is being taken up. But I also say that if you look at Jalen Neal, if you look at Preston Judd, if you look at any of the guys, Johnny Perez or Daniel Aguirre, they're all on the roster. They're all on the 30-man roster. There's nothing stopping those guys from playing. So it's not like you're taking roster spots away from those guys. There's still plenty of roster spots in Major League Soccer that you can have guys who don't play and who are still on the roster. And so I never really worry about one spot or two spots here. But when you add Sasha together and you add Victor together, they take up two spots, one international slot, and some cash. And you can do stuff with that, with other, things that way. So always something to consider. As it stands right now, Christian, I will say that the LA Galaxy have declined about $1.3 million in salary. They have about $84,000 in that out of contract, and they've traded so far for about $958,000 in cap relief and everything else that we've sort of seen. So in terms of funds released, the Galaxy have released $2.33 million right now. From just the option declines, the trades, and everything else. So there's $2.3 million, and they've moved, a bunch of players in that. So there's not a lot of high-value players in these. Derek Williams was a high-value.
Yeah, Derek.
Yeah, so Derek was one that obviously cost. And they also got $75,000 in general allocation money this year for Cameron Dunbar. So you can sort of start adding that stuff up together. It does allow the LA Galaxy to spend a little bit. But I also expect that most of these players that you've seen, Christian, are coming back too. Maybe not Victor and maybe not Sasha, but I'm not convinced that there aren't players on here.
Terms.
Yeah. So if we look at the whole roster, and then we'll sort of we can touch on this for a little bit here, Christian. Galaxy have 24 of 30 spots already spoken for as it stands right now. Now, it doesn't mean you can't trade players, and I think Kevin Cabral is a perfect example of that. We're going to talk about possibly something like that happening here in just a couple minutes. But 24 of 30 spots, 9 of 8 internationals. The LA Galaxy's average age 25.29 currently as it sits as of me snapping that snapshot, I think, yesterday. So it gets older every day. So I don't know if it went up by a tenth or it tends to creep. And so you don't pay attention. But 25.29, the mean 24.6 for the LA Galaxy. So still relatively young in that sort of early prime-ish age. If the entire team was a player at 25 years old, you're sort of like, this is a team that's approaching its prime, right? And so we'll see if that carries off. There's a lot of older guys and there's a lot of younger guys, and that sort of gets you into that 25. But it's sort of fun to track and pay attention to. Yeah. What do you think about the LA Galaxy roster as it stands right now? There's some holes, certainly, but 24 or 30, there's only 6 spots really that there could possibly bring in.
I am such a proponent of youth and bringing players through your system. And I see a lot of Los Dos, and I personally feel that there's a lot of talent that I think deserves a shot, that deserves shots last year. We're talking about Cameron Dunbar. We're talking about Preston Judd, based upon some of the performances of the LA Galaxy senior team players that deserve shots in there. Now, in terms of roster spots and machinations, I'll leave that up to you. You are much more proficient at that than I am. But in terms of chances actually on the field, I don't feel that we saw enough of that. I don't think we've seen it. And that's not, an indictment of the current coaching regime, but I think it's just kind of symptomatic of the way things have been for a long time. And we have players coming through these systems. I know we just bid adieu to Cameron Dunbar and sent him off to DC United, a player that, by the way, just tore it up this year. Tore it up, along with Preston Judd. I thought Liam Doyle was brilliant. I thought Jalen Neal, up until his injury, till the last 2 months of the year, was, performing not the level that he was at 2021, but the early parts of 22 is fantastic. I think these players need to be brought through more. I need to bleed these players more in. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be focused upon in Major League Soccer as we go further. And I'd like to see more of those roster spots given to these guys, because if we're sitting here as an organization saying, hey, we're going to have an LA Galaxy 2 and it's going to be in USL or MLS Next Pro, the whole point is to bring them to the senior team. And if they're not given chances, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
So I want to see these players brought through it. I don't think we're seeing enough of that. And no criticism on current coaching regimes or
past ones
structures, but youth needs to be given a chance here. And we you see it throughout the world over. I mean, Bukayo Saka coming through at Arsenal, coming at the age of 19 years old. we need more of that here, and we need to trust our youth a little bit more. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be the finished article by any means, but it's raw and finished talent. Let them develop and give and have faith in our youth systems. And I'd like to see just a little bit more of that in those spots that you're talking about, where no, not necessarily in first 11 positions, but positions that could come and play a role, perhaps in U.S. Open Cup or in other fixtures and friendlies and such, or even as substitute roles. And there's a role for these guys to play.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jalen Neal is probably one of the biggest C's that I want to see this year, and I think that there's going to be a chance for that with center backs and sort of how they seem to be lining up for different things. I believe they're going to bring in another center back, so I don't think Jalen Neal is going to just back up Caceres and going to back up Sega Coulibaly, and they're going to call that good, and maybe Nick DePuy there or something. To me, that's not deep enough. I would think there's another starter that's going to have to play back and forth with Caceres whenever you look at it, right? So. But I think Jalen Neal plays a part in that. I think he can still play in some of these games. I think he can be a backup, and I think it's time for him sort of to live on that first team and breathe what that first team does. And if he makes it, he makes it. And if he doesn't, then he doesn't. But we always talk about cream rising to the top. This is a chance to see these guys. There's such a huge difference. And this goes for Preston Judd or anybody else who played in the G2 with G2. There's such a huge difference between USL Championship and Major League Soccer. And we see it so often. There are guys who can't make that jump. But having seen Preston Judd play, in the game at SoFi, having seen some of the younger play, Johnny Perez, I think, scored a goal in that game as well. Having seen those guys play, they didn't look out of place, and I think that's always what you're trying to see. How it's a big moment. How do they handle the big moment? And you look to see if they're out of place. By the way, Chris V says a $2 super chat for Jonathan Perez, because Johnny Perez is one of those guys that you want to see as well. Daniel Aguirre is a really exciting player that could be, a really good backup to Gaston Brugman, right? Could be the answer to sort of Brugman gets into the 60th and 70th and can't go anymore. Then Daniel Aguirre comes on and shuts things down. I mean, that's a great option to have. So I think there's stuff there. I think it's up to Greg Vanney to find where these guys can work in. And you say it's no indictment of the current. I will say a little bit. I thought that Vanney shied away from playing younger players in important spots. And I think that he needs to be more comfortable with them. And if it takes this offseason to be more comfortable with them, then do it. Because I think that some of these young kids can actually provide. I don't think they're all going to. I think some of them are going to flop, because that's usually what happens. But there's a chance that there is at least one permanent starter that happens in the next 2 or 3 years out of those, 3 or 4 guys that you're sort of interested in.
Facing the trials and tribulations of senior players that have failed, I think these kids deserve a chance to fail or succeed, to apply their own trade. And I'd like to see them be given that chance and, see what they've got. Because right now, when you talk about world football, world soccer, when you're at about 18 to 22, if you're not going to break into the first team by the time you're 22 years old, it's probably not going to happen for you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So now is the time to bleed these guys in, and let them stumble, let them fall, let them make their mistakes. I know trust me, there's people way smarter than me to make these decisions, and it's hard to take, when you're trying to take into account results and everything. But it would just be interesting to see how they would fare, and trust in your system and see where it comes in, because now you're looking inward on your problems, and you can solve them by bringing these young players up. And there's so much talent here. I see it all the time. I mean, Aaron Long is one of those kids out of UC Riverside, same place as Danny Aguirre. I mean, and there's so much of that tier that Aaron Long is a guy who flew under the radar, and look at him now. He's all the way up into the World Cup team. So these guys deserve chances. They're going to fail. They're going to succeed. Let them skin their knees and let them get a chance out. So just a little bit more of that. I think it's asking a lot of a coach, and I understand why there's reticence perhaps to do that. But at the same time, you and I as fans, and we want to see these young kids come through, and we want to see that next generation of talent fulfill their potential.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Shift gears a little bit into something that I had forgotten about, but then whenever it was announced, I was like, oh, absolutely. I remember this. Coachella Valley Invitational, CVI for short. Don't call it Golchella. Trust me, you'll get in trouble. Just a little, how I spent an hour of my day-to-day deleting stuff, apparently, that was trademarked for no reason whatsoever between two companies that know each other. That's a lot of like subtweeting going on, a little sub-talking, and that's fine. I'm gonna just let that be where it is. But anyway, Coachella Valley Invitational coming to the Empire Polo Club coming out January 29th to February 18th. Tickets on sale for soon. Tickets on sale. That means fans get to go. Remember, fans didn't get to go last year. I went. I had a great time. Quite honestly, I'm kind of disappointed you guys are going to be there and sort of crowd out my nice ability to walk up and down the sideline, Christian, and have just under the nice sun and in the winter out in
I'm thinking
the Palm
like
Springs area.
Josh Guesman, like golfers, 1980s, like umbrella beatbox on his shoulder with like zinc on his nose.
That was basically it. That was
cable down there yelling at people walking in front of him.
Well, if you remember last year, we went a little pirate radio on everybody because
you did play-by-play, didn't you?
I did play-by-play. Well, I did poor play-by-play. I'm trying not to get noticed too much, so I'm not going to be crazy.
Sling.
Yeah. So, by the way, the Galaxy were listening to that entire play-by-play, so it wasn't like I was that far under the radar. And they still allowed me to live for a little bit. I don't know if the games are going to be streamed. I would suggest they probably might not be, although they are trying to make this much bigger. There are 12 teams now. I think there were 6 teams last year. There are 12 teams this year. We had talked very openly about how cool this could be because it's spring training, but not only that, it's on the home of Coachella, right? Where and Stagecoach, where they have these giant music fests. The owners of the property there, Golden Voice, are very big into music promotions and stuff like that. So at one point, and I had talked to some people at the Galaxy and around the Galaxy about how big this could be. It could be that you go to games in the afternoon, you chill under that winter sun, you get a nice suntan, you have some frosty beverages, and then later that night there's a concert. And you go to a concert. Like it could be a destination to be there. And if you look at the teams, the Galaxy are there, Toronto's there, New York City, Charlotte, LAFC, DC United, Minnesota United, Timbers, Red Bulls, Whitecaps, St. Louis is going to be there, and the Earthquakes are going to be there. This is not going to be a bad deal, and you can have multiple games going on. I think I said this whenever we last talked about it. I've been to Wimbledon 2 times, 3 times, maybe 3 times. Only because I tended to go to London while Wimbledon was on. It wasn't like I went there for Wimbledon. But if you go in the early enough rounds, Christian, you pay like $30 or $40, right? Whatever that is in pounds. You pay $30 or $40, you get in, and you can walk around the grounds, and you can go to any of the outer courts. So you can be like, I'm going to go watch this match for a little bit. Well, that's interesting. Oh, what's going on over here? And you go and watch. That's what this could be eventually. There could be 6 games going on at once, and you could walk around to each one and be like, what's going on over here? Oh, let's go see how the Red Bulls are playing. Oh, let's go see how the Galaxy are playing. Let's do this. It could be a destination, and then you throw in food and beverages and possibly music, entertainment, that type of thing. It gets to be a big deal. Now, none of that has been announced in terms of entertainment or anything like that, and I think this is a slow burn in terms of how they grow into it and all these other things. But bottom line is there's going to be 12 teams. They're under the Southern California sun out there on the backside of Palm Springs and the Indio area. And they get to go to this gorgeous facility. And I had a blast when I went. So I imagine that anybody who goes is going to have a blast as well. Let me give you the dates. January 29th to February 18th is the tournament. But the LA Galaxy themselves will be there and starting in February. And I'm trying to remember exactly what those dates are. I have the press release here. But it should be... for me, it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, February 6th to 15th for the LA Galaxy actually headed out there.
Do I smell a COG party bus?
Yeah, right? Why couldn't we do a COG live show from out there, like in the Hoppin area? And,
Hammer driving.
Yeah, we make him drive out from Texas. And then he could drive the bus once he gets there.
Right.
And that makes sense. I could be in the back with the frosty beverages, and you could go, and this could be a real party. So anyway, I'm excited about this, even if you can't call it that one name everybody calls it.
Yes.
So the Coachella Valley Invitational, which still sounds like something from out of Karate Kid, is there and ready to go for everybody. So that's coming up. That should be exciting for you, and that kicks off, a lot sooner. So the LA Galaxy, February 6th is whenever that'll go. So that'll be sort of the quote unquote real start of the preseason matches and everything, and so we'll get to see results and have fun with that. So excited for that.
Podcasting, you need to promo, Josh.
I need promo. They need to
promotions.
They need to pay for the promo. That's how it works. I've been nice, Now all I have to do is be like, okay, so we think that your 9,999 Twitter followers would really like to hear about this. Oh, the good old days. So you will get to go. That's the fun part. Now, let's talk about Christian. Again, this I told you this show was packed full of news and everything. Yeah. We haven't even hit the main thing I want to talk about, and this thing is not the main thing either. But Season Pass Apple TV has been announced. All right. Now, I am one who is very excited about this because I like the ability to have all games in one place, and I never have to worry about blackouts, and I never have to worry about any of that stuff again. So Apple TV taking over, paying $2.5 billion for the rights to go ahead and broadcast all of these games. It's really interesting, but the pricing came out. I know people are clutching their chests, falling over, saying, "Oh, it's too expensive." I'm like, to me, I don't think it is, but some people are. No. So starting February 1st, Christian, fans can subscribe to MLS Season Pass on the Apple TV, app and everything else that's going on. So MLS Season Pass coming up on Apple TV very shortly. $15 a month, $14.99 per month during the season, or $99 per season. Okay, so $100 for the whole season. Or if you're already an Apple TV Plus subscriber, you can sign up for $13 a month or $79 per season, right? So $12.99, $79 per season. That is your ability to watch every single game. And I think there's about 600 games that are going to be shown across this MLS app, right? That's part of that. Every single one, Christian. It doesn't matter. Name me an app, name me a game, and I'll tell you it's on the app. So, like, if you want the MLS All-Star game, it's on the app. You want the final, it should be on the app and also on terrestrial. There's a whole bunch of things that are sort of going on with this. But this was the pricing, and now you're sort of getting to know it. There's interesting little tidbits here, though. You and I have talked about VistaLink, which is the company in Florida who does a lot of the USL games and everything else that is sort of gathered. You know all about it. VistaLink is going to be the company that is in charge of basically getting all of these games out for right now. MLS is going to build their own dedicated broadcast facility, and I believe that's going to be built in New Jersey. But it is not built as of right now. But all 600 games will be broadcast using basically on-site trucks, so on-site production, which is something that we didn't know about. I have some inside information. We'll see how accurate this ends up being, because I've been told that everything changes day to day with this stuff. But as of right now, all 600 games will be broadcast using broadcast trucks with on-site production. That means that most of the games should have on-site talent as well, which is something maybe we didn't know or we were thinking about. And Christian, I know whenever you and I always talk about it, you're like, you have to have on-site talent for a lot of these games because when you're not on-site, right?
Absolutely. 100%. Great. It's game changer.
So, like I said, talent likely to be on site. That could still change because I imagine that they're doing stuff. Through the Athletic article, they said that they had already interviewed 200 people in multiple different languages for these teams. CAA is in charge of casting those particular ones. I don't think, and so far it seems like there's going to be no sideline people, so you're not going to have the sideline. There may not be any even on-camera talent for those games because as you're calling the game, you're not necessarily on camera, Christian, although when we talk about pre-games and everything else, perhaps sometimes you are on camera, but there might not even be some of that. We know about the studio shows. We know about the whip-around shows that are possibly going to happen, much like DirecTV's Red Zone, right? The NFL Red Zone, where you can watch multiple games. Of a typical week, 6 out of the 14 games will be in front of the paywall. That means that basically it's 210 out of the 493 regular season matches will be available for, wait for it, free. 40% of Major League Soccer's games will be played out in front of a paywall. So everybody was saying that this was going to be this walled kingdom where the casuals would never. It sounds to me like there's more than enough games for casuals to ingest, become fans of, and whether that's out in front of the paywall on Apple TV or there's also terrestrial deals that are being done, ESPN, ABC. I'm trying to think. I think Univision possibly in there as well. Those are the ones that are sort of being targeted. Fox being targeted. Doesn't mean that they're going to happen, but those are simulcasts now and not exclusives. So if Fox has a game, Christian, you can still watch it on your Apple TV because you'll have that ability.
Right. It's great. It's great. It's great for you and I as fans. It's fantastic. Centralized location. In terms of subscription rates, extremely comparable. I was going through this on Twitter today where you're smart if you go out and buy the season package deal, especially if you're already an Apple TV Plus subscriber, because I think it works out to about $8 or $10 about $8 to $9 a month on the average if you're already subscribed to Apple TV Plus, and that gives you everything you can want. So, in terms of fans, I mean, let's forget about it. Let's put this into context. You're paying whatever amount of dollars you're paying to get Spectrum or DirecTV, and to get those platforms to bring that to you. That money you don't need anymore. You can use towards this. And I'm not here to pump up Apple TV or MLS,
right?
But I'm just straight up facts. You don't have to pay for that anymore, and you're controlling the content that you're getting. So I don't find that exorbitant whatsoever. I find it quite fair, especially when you talk about the games in front of the paywall here. So there's plenty to be gained by that, even if you're kind of a casual fan. So in terms of a broadcaster, I am one of those guys that's trying to buck his trade and trying to make his name in there, and I'm amidst of those people that are talking in the interview process, and hopefully trying to be a part of that, as is Joe, as is Kobe, and everybody else that's actually in the same position that us local guys are. So personally for me, it's hard right now because we're local guys and we've done this our entire lives, and it's gone.
Yeah,
what do we do now? Now we're thrown into a pot where we're all trying to go get our jobs. So, but I believe that the betterment of the sport is the betterment of all of us ultimately in the end. So if this is better for the sport, and that's kind of the litmus test here, then I think that's going to lift all boats in terms of all of us people working in media and all of us as fans. It's groundbreaking. I'm kind of on the fence about this because I know a lot of people are out of work.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, and there's a lot of people that are upset about it.
Yep.
And I'm going to be frank. I mean, it sucks.
Yep.
And how would you like it if you said, your job's going to go to a place in New Jersey, and someone else is going to be calling your Galaxy games that you've been doing for 20 years. So, so there is that element to it. But at the same point, this is an evolving business, and especially in media, it's changing, at an exponential pace. So, I think it's more than fair. I think Apple is the next step. I think it's right to do this. The Vista Link thing is going to be very interesting to see how they make it work, and how there's going to be a lot of glitches in the road. I'm going to tell you right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Do you have some hope though that because it's Apple and listen, how do I say this? MLS is producing this stuff, right? This is an MLS production. Right. Whenever this eventually comes out, right? So it's being fed to one of the largest the largest content distributor in the world, which is Apple. So right. Apple isn't necessarily producing this. So if you have a high opinion of Apple, or even if you have a low opinion of Apple, if you look at that and you say, okay, they at least usually do things really well in terms of when they roll things out. So I'm less concerned about it being a really crappy product, but we're going to get to see that because it's happening. I mean, it's going to go. And as you said, bumps in the road. I just mentioned that they're changing their idea. They're changing their mind every 2 or 3 minutes, right? About how this is done and what they're going to do. And, yes, best laid plans are this way and that way and everything else. So we don't know what that final form looks like. And we're probably not going to know until that first ball is kicked. And the first ball that's kicked will be the LA Galaxy versus LAFC at the Rose Bowl. It's the big primetime Apple game. I would say that, you'd hope that they have figured it out by then, because that's going to be a massive game. One of the largest in the world probably at that time. And you better get it right, because the only place you're going to be able to find it, Apple TV. So
there's a lot on this. What they've undertaken is a massive task that it's hard to convey in terms of just the basic layman's terms. But we're talking about something that was announced in June, and it has to be up and running by mid-February. It has to be up and running basically by the end of January.
Yep.
That doesn't give you much from times of announcement to inception. So
right.
And what they're talking about, and the reason why they're doing a lot of these on-site games is because they don't have the infrastructure to do remotes, what they call REMI broadcasts. So because the technology cannot be implemented on that short of notice. It's
right.
Physically impossible. If you talk to any technical person, it's just not hot. But it's great for us because I really think that having an announcer, and Joe will tell you this, any announcer with their salt, Peter Drury will tell you this, you need to be on site as an announcer to feel the energy, to see things that you don't see on a tube. Trust me, I've I came through this system where I called games from Germany in the early 2000s, and you have no idea what's going on in Germany when you're in Los Angeles at 3:30 in the morning.
Right.
It's physically impossible.
Right.
You do the best that you can. You can paint the best picture you can, and I don't care if you're Howard Cosell, if you're Peter Drury, or if you're John Strong, or anybody. It's physically impossible. There's nothing that can substitute for being on these grounds. I love that they're on the grounds. I think it's fantastic. This first season, perhaps it will something that they will see and say, hey, this is great. Let's get this energy. Let's get the advantage to having these announcing teams and production staffs on the ground and carry that forward into the future. I don't know if that's the future model as of right now.
Yep.
So I would like to see that be the model, being a purist that I am. But I'm a big proponent of what Apple's going to do. I think we need centralized broadcasting in this league because I'm so tired of. I'm a broadcaster, Joe. I mean, I'm a broadcaster, Josh, and and Joe and I have this problem where we can't find the games, because we're trying to watch the games of the team we're trying to watch next week, and we can't find it.
Yep.
And we're having to, contact PR, public relations of the Colorado Rapids, trying to get a copy of their game.
Yep.
It's nuts. It shouldn't be that way.
No, it should be easy to find.
This is the next step in that direction. So
Yeah.
sorry to over pontificate, but I've got a lot of feelings about this, and it hits kind of close to home.
I think your ability to be within that and explain it to people. Listen, I would hope that you wouldn't find that on any other podcast where really you're hearing all the stuff that's going on. This is why it's going to be difficult. These are the hurdles. These are the hurdles to finding people. These are the hurdles to broadcasting the game. These are the hurdles to putting something together that eventually becomes, Christian, you just said, I'd love to be able to watch, the Colorado Rapids game, their last two games, because I want to see what they did at home and I want to see what they did away and how they played and if there's any differences. So that way then whenever they come in and play the LA Galaxy, I can watch that. I try to do that. It's difficult. But if you're able to go onto an Apple TV app and I'm able to just click Colorado Rapids and then scroll back and click the play button because they have the rights to every game. So it's not like it's going to be blacked out or something. So they can create the DVR. Imagine the history that you're able to archive in terabytes and terabytes of information eventually, but the history you're able to archive. Eventually, you should be able to go down, 10 years from now and scroll back and go, okay, let's go to that 2022-2023 season where the LA Galaxy beat LAFC at the Rose Bowl on the opening. We can watch that whole game again right now just by scrolling back and clicking on it. Yeah. And you won't have to worry about trying to find it on YouTube or somewhere else. So anyway, I think it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see. I like it for its simplicity in terms of from the watcher, right? Which is I go here and the game is there and that's it. And I never have to worry about that again. Season ticket members get this for free. I think they expect about 300 to 400,000 subscribers come from the season ticket members. You won't have to pay that money. So you're good if you're a season ticket member, and that's across the league.
Josh, that is a fantastic attribute of the whole system. Fantastic.
Yep, and Eduardo gave us a $5 super chat and says season ticket members get it for free, and yes, they do. And I wanted to bring that up. So that's what we got. Let's go quickly. I want to try to close up. And we talked about the Apple logo, by the way, the Apple TV logo on the jerseys and how they're going to change and be different ways. So they will be different colors for different teams in different ways. So we'll see what the LA Galaxy do with theirs. I want to get to an article that Damian Calhoun did with Greg Vanney. We talked about Kevin Baxter's article with Greg Vanney. Now Damian Calhoun did an article with Greg Vanney, which I think is insightful. So let's go over some of the quotes from this because I think they're going to be good. We won't spend a ton of time on it. I want you to go and read Damian's article because Damian's an excellent writer. He covers the LA Galaxy very well. He's a very, very good calming, steady voice that covers the LA Galaxy. I always enjoy Damian, and Damian sits up in the press box with me not too far, and he's great to hang out with him.
Yeah, you can't get a reaction out of it.
No, Damian's just smooth, man.
He should be a coach.
He's good. He would tell you no, by the way. No, he'd never be a coach. That wasn't going to happen. So, in this article, obviously, it was talking about the progress that was made. It was talking about looking forward a little bit. So I pulled some of these quotes. This is what Vanney said. He said, I think we made progress for sure. Most teams, especially here at the Galaxy, a successful season is ultimately winning a championship or winning some trophies. But I think we're also in a stage where we're trying to make progress with each of our years, progress towards being a perennial contender for championships. And I do think we made this progress talking about this season. One of the other things he said was we have a really solid core group of players that we can continue to build with and build forward. I think some of of our young guys have made progress. We saw Dejan Joveljic even make big progress over the course of this year, proving that he can be an additional goal scorer to our group. Ricky is still a young player who's now into the fold. Gaston brings us clarity. Mark Delgado was having a phenomenal first half of the season. Second half, he was dealing with some physical issues, but we have a lot of good pieces. Julian Araujo is a year more experienced, and I thought finished the season strong. There are a lot of things, a lot of steps forward for us. I think one of the biggest steps forward is the group has grown in continuity and belief. I think they truly believe they can be the best team in MLS. That's part of it when you're rebuilding a franchise or rebuilding a team, is they've got to get across that hurdle where they see each other, they trust each other, and they go, yeah, we can beat anybody. We can be the best. And then that starts to drive the environment and the culture to now we can start to achieve and push towards that. I mean, some of this is like, I always, whenever I read these quotes, I'm like, oh, I realize why Greg Vanney's a coach. Because like you read that and you're like, fired up, man. Let's do this, right? You're like, oh, I wish the season started now. The boys are all ready. They're all fired. They're ready to run through a wall. Like when you read some of this stuff, I'm always like, oh, okay. But also, I know it's rah, right? But it's also how he sees things, right? And I think a lot of fans would sit here and say, well, he screwed over Dejan Joveljic this year. Right? Greg Vanney says Dejan Joveljic succeeded in what I gave him to do. Right? Yeah. And I don't think you and I, Christian, would be on the minority of people who were like, he used Dejan Joveljic pretty effectively throughout the season. And you had a Chicharito side who, yes, struggled through the center middle of that year, but scored 18 goals. Whenever it all came down to it, like you got the most out of Chicharito that you probably were going to get as well, even with that sort of lack of service in the middle of the year that we all saw that picked up again once he got service again. So could Chicharito be better next year? Could Dejan Joveljic be better next year, more comfortable in their roles, understanding where they're at, all these things? Greg seems to think that those guys are happy. He talks about Julian Araujo being happy. You got Ricky and Gaston Brugman. So I just think it's interesting looking through that and being like, and I don't expect Greg Vanney to sit here and go, no, we sucked. Like, he's not that guy either. So you always have to temper what he's actually saying, what he's actually meaning with, how this is going to be perceived. Because he's talking to us. He's talking to Damien. He's talking to the fans, but he's also talking to the players because, the players are going to read it too. So, like, you have to be careful with what you say and how you say it. And I think people who don't understand that are bad managers. Right? And you can poke the bear at the right time when you need to poke the bear, but there's no need to poke the bear right now because we're going to talk about Kevin Cabral here in a second, and Greg Vanney's going to have a very rosy view of Kevin Cabral, much rosier than everybody else. But as I've said many times, Christian, and I think hopefully you'll agree with me, maybe not, Greg Vanney sees everything that we see. He saw Kevin Cabral struggle last year. He saw the positions and everything that happened. He's in that understanding. People will think that he's not. I tend to believe he does. He sees it as we see it, that Kevin Cabral has to go. The quotes I'm about to read to you are going to suggest that perhaps he doesn't see, the big things. But again, he's talking in a situation, I think, where he has to there are three ways it could go. Kevin Cabral stays. Kevin Cabral gets traded, right? Nobody wants Kevin Cabral, and so what are you going to do with him? Like, how is this going to go? You don't know the answers to these questions, and if you don't know the answers, then you better not say Kevin Cabral sucks, and we're trying to get rid of him, and hopefully that goes. So let me read the quotes. This was on Kevin Cabral. There will be some expectations for him to make some physical growth over the course of the season. We will put together a plan of what we expect to see and try to take big steps forward as we go into next year. We will consider all of our options to get him to where we need him to be. That's, by the way, if you want to read into anything, listen to that line. We will consider all of our options to get him to where we need him to be. That might not be on the team anymore. That might be somewhere else where he can develop, and that's where they need him to be. We've invested in the young man. You see him get into some really, really good positions. Now we have to start to see the production when we get into those positions. He knows this and he accepts this. Some of that is mental, it's confidence. And some of it, I think, is physical and technical. But I do think it's mental for him, and we're trying to find the best solutions and working with him on trying to find the best ways for him to continue to take steps forward. We're considering all of our possibilities to help him to get to that point. I think the best possibility for helping Kevin Cabral, I'm going to say this quietly and into the microphone, I'm going to whisper to everybody, is to trade him. Yeah, just between us, is to trade him or loan him out to a team in France. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, good. I just yeah. It's Christian.
Go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's time for him to go.
So,
that's all you need to say.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and again, I know people are going to hear that. I know they just have this like visceral reaction. Greg Vanney doesn't know what he's talking about. Greg Vanney does know. This is the part where I don't like it, though. He goes, I don't know if it was a step back. The season was a step back for Kevin Cabral. It was. But I don't believe he took a big step forward. Duh. That's for sure. Inside of games, he does some things that help our team, but ultimately when you're an attacking player, when you're a winger or a guy who ends up in front of the goal with as many opportunities, who want a better percent of those finishing with goal, whether it is him finishing the goal or setting up the goal. Again, he understands that and the expectation. He says, I thought he would be in the 8 to 10 goal range this year. By the way, I agree with that. I thought he should have been in the 8 to 10 goal. And if he finishes like 50% of the chances that he had, he's probably scores 8 or 9.
20.
Yeah, exactly. He would have had 20. We certainly didn't get there, so we've got to collectively, as a group, we have to determine with him what's the right scenario, what's the right moves in terms of what he needs to be doing for himself and what we need to be doing to help him take those steps forward. I hear that, and in my mind, it's me. I think Greg Vanney's being very telegraphy in that he could not be here because we need to do what's best for him. To get him to proceed, we need him. How do we develop him? It might what's best. Let's look at that.
Josh, we could say, I know we're in the podcast business. We can overtalk this. He's not good enough.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I was hopeful. I've never wanted.
I'm with you 100%. I want him to succeed. I want him, and he got his runouts, and he got his runouts, and he got his runouts, and he got his runouts. He's not good enough. End of story. Mistake made. Move on. That's it.
Send him on loan because I don't think you're going to be able to sell him.
We can talk around this and reasons why, and I understand why Greg is saying this, and more power to him. But the point is, and we all know this, everybody that's seen it, it's just not good enough, especially in a designated player spot. It's time to move on. And I wanted him to succeed. Trust me, we all did, and not good enough.
Experiment over.
Experiment's over.
Thank you.
Trust me. It's like Fernando Torres, when he moved from Liverpool to Chelsea and got 2 years of starting opportunities and, scored a handful of goals.
Yep. It didn't work.
Yeah. And there's no ill will or anything.
No.
It happens in soccer all the time. Fine. Move on. You're going to hit, you're going to miss on your signings. The point is acknowledge your misses and correct those mistakes. And that's where this is a critical moment for the Galaxy, I think, where they've got to go, hey, wait, we've got a player here who's young, who has promise, but can't deliver. He's been given a chance. Now where do we send him off to? Who's going to want this guy?
Yeah. I mean, I think he finds a home back in League Two in France. Okay,
if you're a League Two team,
yeah,
you're looking at him and you're looking at tape of him.
Yep.
Are you going to want him?
No, it's a difficult. No. Well, maybe you will whenever you realize the LA Galaxy are probably going to pay.
The fact that there's going to be takers, there isn't. That's the problem the Galaxy find themselves in. So they're trying to, and understandably so, and in all defense of them, absolutely, they should defend it. It's their position because they own this player. But here we are in a situation where a player's not producing, but there's no takers. But we want takers to get them. So we're kind of sitting here with tainted goods in so to speak. So let's be honest with it. I mean, call it what it is. It's not working out. Move on. If you got to buy them out, you buy them out. It happened with Gio, in the situations where they're looking at it with possibly Douglas Costa. But you have to acknowledge the folly of your ways because there's only way you're going to get better is to acknowledge the folly of your past, cut your losses, and move forward. And ruthless as it sounds, that's the way it works.
The rumors have been on the side of Kevin Cabral moving. All right, of not being with the LA Galaxy now, and the rumors, and while they're unsubstantiated, certainly, and while anybody with a pulse could say, "Hey, the Galaxy need to get rid of Cabral," because like I said, I'm of the opinion that he's not on this team whenever it starts the season in 2023 because I'm of that opinion. He can't be, and maybe it's because of the young designated players.
About your organization, if you bring back a Kevin Cabral,
you're
five-time champion of Major League Soccer. And you're bringing back a player like Kevin Cabral.
I had no problem with the 2 years. I had no problem with giving him 2 years. Maybe he got too many starting spots down the line. I still believe that he probably provided in some ways something that the Galaxy didn't have, at least in their upper. Maybe Cameron Dunbar could have fit into that. I think we've talked a little bit about that. Maybe you could have had somebody else fit slightly into that role, right? But the writing was on the wall for Derek Williams coming down the stretch where he wasn't starting anymore and he was coming off the bench. The writing was on the wall for Kevin Cabral as well, which was he wasn't starting anymore. You have a young designated player who doesn't start. You have a designated player in Douglas Costa who can't go more than 60 minutes, right? So you have to do something. And like I said, I think that was it. It's done. And I think that Greg is saying all the things he needs to say to make sure that he doesn't return or lower the value any more than he already has, than Kevin Cabral already has. And so now it's about how do they move him and when they move him.
And also, too, I mean, this is a lot on the Galaxy right now, where if you bring back a player that has proven that he cannot produce, what are the fans going to think of you as an organization?
Yeah.
What are you and I mean, I'm pro Galaxy, and I'm always in the. But if you're bringing back a player that's proven that they're just not good enough to bring them back, what is that going to say to your fans when you're trying to get them to get season tickets, when you're trying to bring them into promotional events, when you're trying to get them to come out and support your team? I mean, I'm a fan at heart, and I would be disheartened.
Yeah.
If I saw him out there, and I saw him out there in the number 9 shirt.
How can you take him to like a team signing? How can you like? Wouldn't you be worried that people are going to boo him? That people are going to get in his face? Like that's that type of thing, because it's gotten that bad. It
already happened at the end of the season. I'm not going to pile on him, but the point is, it's time to go make a move. And if not, it's okay. We all fail. We all fall on our face. I mean, God, trust me, I've done it more than anybody else. You fall on your face, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, move on, boom. The transfer market is hit or miss. You're lucky to get 60% of your signings. I mean, Sir Alex Ferguson, Eric Jemba. For every Cristiano Ronaldo, there's an Eric Jemba, or, a Fred, or, the kid from Portugal. But whatever. It's hit or miss. It's gambler's market. And
Joao Pedro?
Right. Joao Pedro. Exactly. We didn't hit.
No.
So fine. Move on. Boom. But don't let it dwell, because when it happens like this, now you're endangering the morale and the ethos of your team, and it festers. And these guys know this. These guys know exactly what I'm saying, way ahead of more time than I am. But the point is, I understand the fans' frustrations. I'm with them. And we didn't work out. Time to move on. Let's see what we can do. But free up that spot, because every time we talked about with Sasha, we talked about with Victor, those are spots that are, regardless of the machinations and the money that you were talking about and how it works with the salary cap, those are spots that are precious, especially in our league where, space is finite.
Well, and you're talking about a designated player.
Fiorentina, it's infinite. I can get 45 players. It doesn't matter. This space is finite. We've got to get players that can contribute. If not, then it's at our loss and we can't replace them. So
See you later. That's how it has to be. I understand.
You have to be so much on top of your game in terms of player personnel and putting them in and getting the best out of your players, more so in this league than any other league in the world. And hopefully, in situations like Kevin Cabral, it's happened. We can point the finger all the time, but it's time to move on. Cut your losses, however you have to do it. Leave it people smarter than me to do it, but move on. Kevin Cabral cannot be in an LA Galaxy jersey 2023.
Matt gave us a $5 super chat. Says with the Adidas deal ending, I believe in 2024, who would you guys want as far as brand jerseys? So do you have? Are you a Nike guy?
I don't.
It's like
I'm a Kappa man.
I do not. I think that and I know Adidas has.
That's a hammer question.
Right, that is a hammer question, but he has the night off. I would say that every jersey manufacturer has its hits and it has its misses. And I think that if you want the Adidas to go to Nike and then you have Nike, well, Nike puts out some
the ad.
Yeah. Well, that ad was great, right?
It was, but there's one big thing missing.
Yeah, what's that?
Zinedine Zidane.
Oh, so they didn't want Zidane, huh? Or they asked him and he said no. And
this guy. Yeah. So he had shoe politics and.
Oh my! As always.
I was a big. I'm a big Zizou fan, so.
I gotcha. All right, let's move on to a couple of our final things here. The LA Galaxy have 4 free agents. Free agency is open. That opened as of 10 a.m. on November 16th. So the Galaxy have 4 players who are free agents. Sasha Kleshin, Richard Sanchez, Jorge Villafana, and Eric Zavaleta. All options, all free agents. And so basically that means they can sign, and there have been a lot of restrictions lifted from the free agency that used to be only like you could only sign 1 or 2 free agents. It's unlimited now. That's gone away. So for the most part, it's open market for a lot of players. This is one of the reasons Aaron Long has been talked about. There's a bunch of good players out there right now that are going to be free agents, and that is now started. So that means the LA Galaxy can go out and try to sign free agents. If you'll remember, they missed really badly on free agents last year. And if you look at some of the main players who Albert Rusnak going to Seattle, and then you had, the midfield with Acosta at LAFC, the Galaxy went after apparently all three of like the highly talented midfielders.
Elias Sanchez.
Yeah, Elias Sanchez, that's right. And so they missed on all three of sort of the big, highly touted, wanted midfielders. Now, do I think the LA Galaxy's form has improved and therefore their chances of landing more free agents? Perhaps they're seen now as a team that's on the rise. I think that their standing is much better than it was at the offseason last year. So do they have a better chance of signing some of the free agents they want? I think they do, depending on position, depending on where they're at. So that's my take on it. Also, the end of year waivers coming up on Thursday, November 17th.
Some good players out there, Josh.
There are. Don't pay attention to any of this stuff, like the reentry draft or anything. Just wait for the results, because trying to follow it or trying to track it is exhaustive, and they don't publish it until like the list is done and most of the teams pass anyway. So not worth your time paying attention to, but know that, like, Joe Corona is on the re-entry draft stage 1, right? So if the Galaxy were looking for backup midfield depth, perhaps they could go get Joe Corona again. That was totally, I just looked down the list real quick and saw Joe Corona's on the list. I was like, I'll put his name in there. Doesn't mean that they should. I'm just saying that that's an option now for that stage 1. Remember, stage 1, you're basically picking up the player with their contract, right? So what their contract already is, you're picking it up. Stage 2 is you're picking up the player and you have the right to renegotiate a new contract, all right? So keep that in mind as we go along. Are you big on the re-entry draft there, Christian? You always sitting at the keyboard waiting for it?
I'm absolutely stupid when it comes to like the whole machinations of it, and that's where you're way better at it than I ever will be. But in terms of quality of player that's available, and if you can get them, I mean, there is some quality out there. I mean, I was just talking about Ola Kamara. He's out there, and you talk about Joe. I mean, we're not talking about designated player quality, but there is some player quality out there that can be worth considering.
Right.
I mean, but as far as like contract value and what they're presently on and what you can get them on, then that obviously remains to negotiation. You definitely don't want to pick up a player that's on some fat contract, and have to try and bring them into your squad, but they're not going to deliver to their their promise. So
right.
Yeah,
I think
it's tough for me.
I think Orlando City said goodbye to Pato, so this could be the chance that I've been waiting for, to have Pato on the LA Galaxy, so that way they could be the Pato and Pato show.
God, talk about a guy who's just signed. He's
and he goes everywhere.
Is it falling up a thing? I mean, good Lord.
Every time. Let's go to one of the rumors, and Alex Ruiz over at the Striker was sort of summarizing a lot of this, but there are reports from Spain that Villarreal are interested in bringing LA Galaxy midfielder Riqui Puig on loan with an option to buy this winter. Alex says he's not buying this rumor too much, but don't be shocked to hear more interest from Europe. Agree with that, especially if Puig continues to dominate MLS. Yep. There is some technical things that you always have to work out about. Remember that Barcelona has the option to buy the player back, right? That's built into the contract, that Barcelona has a 50% sell-on fee should the LA Galaxy sell on, and that at that 50%, they probably have a large say about where Riqui Puig goes and how he sort of does. Not saying that they have overall veto power, because I don't believe that to be true, unless they want to be like, okay, well, we really want to sell him to Villarreal, so we're going to buy him back and then sell him to Villarreal for, whatever it ends up being. So there could be some of that stuff in there. That being said, I don't expect Riqui Puig to go anywhere this year. Okay, I think that's it. I don't think a loan makes sense in a World Cup year where they're not even really playing, and then you have the winter open, and then you have to come back for... I would hope that LA Galaxy learned the lesson with David Beckham going to AC Milan and doing all the stuff that he did back and forth, and that drove everybody. People forget about those years about David Beckham going on loan and getting injured and coming back and all this other stuff, right? So that could be on tap for Riqui. Here is the thing. One thing, if perhaps he does go on loan somewhere, he's got young legs and he can probably handle that sort of wear and tear that he's going to get.
He's got insurance,
right? So those are sort of the things. I don't expect that, and I think I'm with Alex. There is going to be a lot of smoke around him though, because he was very, very good for the LA Galaxy in Major League Soccer, and people paid attention.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely, and the Galaxy better get used to this.
Yep.
Because if he plays like he did the last 10, 11 games or whatever he did, I mean, he changed the game. He changed his team. He changed the entire Western conference, the way he played. This is in my opinion, a player that could change the landscape in MLS signings. A young player like this who's using MLS as a platform. We haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Ever.
No.
Of a player of his caliber. This guy, when he's on his game, no doubt about it. He can be amongst, he's not an elite European player, but he's definitely up there in an upper class of European type of player in that regard. So, yeah, and we better get used to it, because as he elevates his game and as he elevates his stock and brings the Galaxy into, better success, there's going to be people sniffing around, and that's normal. It's part of the game. The Galaxy better get ready for it, because it's going to happen, and there's going to be people tabling offers. And then you get into a situation where, in the machinations and contractual obligations, which way more than anybody is, that this puts pressure on the organization of the Galaxy to go, wait a minute, okay, we've got a guy on a TAM deal. He came from a Barcelona deal, was paying him $4 million a year. He was being paid roughly, what am I wrong, at about 1.6?
Yeah, I think the 1.6 is correct.
Yeah. Well, you're coming in and you're with an organization, whether it be Villarreal, Manchester United, AC Milan, or saying, hey, you know what, we'll give you, $15 million, and Ricky, we'll give you, $5 million a year, Ricky.
Yeah, 1.7 guaranteed, by the way, just in case anybody, 1.695. So.
Okay, so what's Ricky gonna do? I mean, Ricky, we know he probably wants to go back to Europe. He wants to get back to the elite level. So the guys just have to get used to tabling those offers and being able to negotiate with that and get the most out of the situation of, they're in a great position right now, but you don't want to be in a situation where, for instance, AC Milan or anybody, Chelsea, comes in and says, hey, I've got this, I'm going to table you an offer of $15 million.
Right.
I'm going to pay Ricky $10 million a year, but the LA Galaxy refuse it.
Yeah, now
and
Ricky
stuck on his TAM deal, and now you've got a resentful Ricky Puig.
Yep, which is why eventually maybe he gets moved up to a designated player deal, because you're going to have to pay him more money, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
you have to pay a player. The point being, you have to pay a player what he's worth. Ricky Puig is not a TAM player.
Nope.
Ricky Puig is a designated player. We all know it. He has to be, regardless of the machinations and everything and the restrictions on the team rules ever. He's got to be a designated player, because he is of a quality of a designated player. And he understands that he's a player that's trying to rebuild his stature after his misgivings at Barcelona. And now he's getting a chance to prove himself. Well, now he's doing that. And now he's going to want a little bit more in return, saying, hey, I produced for you guys. What are you going to do for me?
Yep. No.
Someone's out here going, hey, I'll give you this. I will give you a $20 million contract. I'll give the Galaxy a $10 million transfer fee. And if Ricky Puig is sitting there saying, okay, but the Galaxy is saying, you're under contract with us, is that going to make Ricky Puig happy?
Yeah, exactly. You can't afford to upset that apple cart. So eventually, two things have to.
The player.
Yep. I think two things eventually have to happen. I don't think it needs to happen this year. Maybe towards the end of the year, depending on how he's playing. But you need to make sure that he's a designated player for the next year if you plan on keeping him past this year, right? Yeah. Because I think you can get one more TAM year out of him before everybody's like, yeah, this kid
I
is
think
worth.
Summer's going to be interesting.
It will.
Summer will be interesting.
It could, right? And so,
because
but
you have the first half of the MLS season.
Yep.
And if he continues on like he did the last half of the season, or the last 10, 11 games, then the scouts are going to come sniffing around, and then their transfer window opens up, and then the Galaxy are going to be like, oh my goodness, we're in the middle of the dog days of summer. What do you do? That's when
you're going to have to sign him to a new contract that's a designated player contract. Remember, Douglas Costa's contract comes up at the end of this year, right? Because he has one more year. And so basically you could say, Ricky, we're going to pay you a lot of money coming up in 2024. So let's sign a new contract right now. We'll get you all set, blah, 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 the whole deal. And we're going to be good, right? Right? We're going to be good, Ricky. And then you have to hope. There's two things that end up happening. One, he becomes a designated player if he plays. And as we expect him to play, he becomes a designated player in 2024. And two is he eventually gets sold too. So those things happen, and you have to account for and be ready for both those. There's only one way Ricky Puig does not get sold, that he loves Los Angeles, he loves the lifestyle, he loves being here so much, and that's so different from Barcelona and everything that he grew up with, that he wants to stay, and that I don't think that's going to happen, right? That's the only way, though. He has to fall in love with being where he's at and being content and still being this great player, but he doesn't seem like that kind of guy.
No, it's not happening.
All right.
He's a footballer. He's a world-class footballer.
Let's close this up and talk about our last thing. The LA Galaxy announced that they're going to host some FIFA World Cup watch parties This will be at the Hermosa Beach Pier. And so they're going to do one on Friday, They have 2 games they're going to do on Friday, November 25th. There's an 8 a.m. kickoff, an 11 a.m. kickoff. One of those, of course, on Friday, November 25th, which is Black Friday, is the U.S. men's national team versus England. You can be down on the Hermosa Beach Pier. They have big screens out there. They partnered with everybody to have the big screens. Yeah, are you pumped? Or you're nervous?
There's nobody that wants to beat the English more than I do. Sorry, Soph.
Yeah, she's okay. She understands.
I just.
So anyway,
Love it.
Yeah, Netherlands versus Ecuador, and then U.S. men's national team versus England. That's on Friday, November 25th. Then on Saturday, November 26th, it's France versus Denmark, and then Mexico versus Argentina. 8 a.m., 11 a.m. games on those.
God, it's so good.
It's yeah. I mean, it's Christmas.
So
It's Christmas come a little early with the World Cup, and
I know, but it's funny. I was tweeting about this the other day. I'm like, it's November. It's weird.
It is weird.
I'm like. I love club soccer, right? I love club football, whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, I love the European club football. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm pissed off that it's gone.
Right.
World Cup comes in. I'm like, this is weird.
Yeah, it feels weird.
Qatariness of it, where let's be honest,
it's not great. It's not great.
That's another pod that you can, head up somewhere.
No, I'm good.
So I'm kind of like I'm torn, but now I'm starting to get a little fired up, and I'm going to embrace my hypocrisy.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah, it is weird. It's weird timing. It's weird that like you're sort of the lead up feels wrong because it's not long and procrastinated and drawn out. It's not 3 weeks of
Christmas in July,
right? It feels goofy and a little icky at the same time. Having said that, I'm really interested.
Do you feel dirty, Josh?
I do, 100%. And I like I said, embrace the hypocrisy. I'm sort of with that as well. I want to see. I am a very big believer that I have no idea who wins that group. Group B is like just this crazy. I would expect England to win the group if we're really looking at it. But you can't tell me that there aren't scenarios where the U.S. wins that group, or Wales wins that group, or where Iran wins that group. Yeah. I don't think there are a lot of teams that are. I don't think these teams are separated by all that much. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. I'm interested in seeing which the best team out of CONCACAF, who gets the furthest out of CONCACAF. I think that's interesting. I want to see
who gets the farthest out of CONCACAF.
I don't think any of them make it out of the group stage. I don't think the U.S. is making it out of the group stage.
Goodness.
I don't think Mexico's making it out of the group stage. Although they have one softball, I think, in Saudi Arabia there, but that helps them. But like if you're looking at Canada, I don't think Canada's making it out of the group stage. Yeah, so I just think it'll be interesting. We're going to have to tally goal differential in order to figure out which the best CONCACAF. But I'm also interested in, I think there's 35 players from Major League Soccer who are going to be represented on World Cup teams. I'm interested to see how those players do. And like Aaron Long is a target, right, that you're looking at. How does he play? And if he plays really well, does that mean that he gets outside of any sort of view for the LA Galaxy?
Riverside.
So anyway, I think there's a lot of fun things to sort of look at. So I think that does it. Vera, by the way, said, sorry if this is a dumb question, but if there are no takers for Cabral, can he be pushed down to Galaxy 2 to get him off the first team roster? No, he can't because he's a designated player. Now, that may change with MLS Next Pro, but as far as USL was concerned, he couldn't go down there. The only reason a designated player could be moved down there is if they're on a rehab stint, like they got hurt and you needed to get them some time. That's the only way that could happen, but you can't just dump somebody on the USL side.
Victor Vasquez did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but by the way, people forget about Remy Cabral. Let me tell you, Remy Cabral, a little bit of a beefier version than his brother, and made some serious inroads with the LA Galaxy too. So one player that perhaps you just want to keep your eye on.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Fun to see how this all shakes out. I don't know what the show schedule is for next week. I think I'm going to do a show. Yeah, I know. You would think at this point. I might do a show on Monday, but that would mean that something actually has to happen between Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in order for Monday to sort of be a thing.
Well, the U.S. plays on Monday, right?
They do. Yeah, right? They play in the morning. I think at 11 a.m. Wasn't that what we were just
11 our time?
Yeah, I think they play at 11. So, but that's not something I cover because there's no Galaxy players on it, so I don't really care. That's not that like in terms of how this show progresses. We don't care which national team you are for or against. It does not matter. We're talking about LA Galaxy players. Uruguay would be obviously the one that we would be paying most attention to because of Martin Caceres on that. So anyway, we could look at that. I don't know. There's also a possibility that we could have a special guest on Monday, and if that happens, then there will be a show on Monday. I will let you know. But as far far as Thursday, no Thursday, because that's Thanksgiving. That ain't happening. But we'll come back, and eventually we're going to start working our way back into 2 shows a week. But Kevin is in Qatar, so we're sort of feathering those in as we go. All right? Good. Glad we got everything. Did we talk enough, being it's an hour and 40 minutes? Yeah.
1 hour, 52 minutes. And
that's our call.
We talk as well.
Yeah, that was our call. I have about almost an hour and 40 minutes of recording right now. So we did a pretty good job. So I think we got everybody looking at all the things that are sort of going on in the LA Galaxy, around the league. We didn't say Golchella, so we won't be sued. Oh, I said it. And so we are happy and good customers.
1 hour, 53:16, you said it.
Yeah, that's right. So I think we're all set for all that. So we'll have you ready and willing. Hopefully everybody has a good Thanksgiving. If I don't talk to you on Monday, Christian, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, wonderful Thanksgiving, and I'm sure we'll talk soon. All right.
Yeah, well, let's get a little choo-choo going.
Yeah, that's right. I said you can come on down. By the way, Toys for Tots coming up this weekend. If you are there, Fairview Park, Costa Mesa, we're doing Toys for Tots and free train rides. Donations appreciated always. But I'll be out there. I'll probably be in an engineer's uniform, so you would love to take pictures of that and put that all over the internet. Wouldn't you? Thank God Twitter's going to blow up.
Oh God, I don't know where to go with this. That's too
yeah, you just leave it go. Just let it go. All right.
Loaded with all kinds of possibilities. Hey, Josh, big ups. Thank you for everything. Thanks for all your great coverage. I know it's been a big season for you, so thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you. Tell people where they can find you, Christian.
C-Mile Sports, and you can also check me out on Twitter. On Pac-12, as well as some other outlets such as Colorado Raptors.
Very cool. Very good. Glad to have you on, Christian, as always. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at JGuesman, JGUESMAN. Of course, at Galaxy Podcast, Corner of the Galaxy, where you can find all of our shows. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Once again, getting ready for the 2023 season. Just 100 days until the LA Galaxy take on LAFC at the Rose Bowl. Everyone, have a wonderful weekend. If I don't talk to you, have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday as well. For Mr. Christian Miles, I'm Josh Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to our little Corner of the Galaxy. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast, and be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.